Well, greetings to everyone at home. It is a cloudy Saturday morning. The cloudy will not deter us because we have an especially bubbly personality that is joining us this morning. She is a super fine human being that is just the light and is just the energetic force that is so powerful for just women in general. I have a pleasure of introducing you to one special person, Nollie Maoto. She is a phenomenon of her own in the ICT space. She currently works for F&B as an executive head of the business analysis environment. She also oversees the analytics environment as well as the planning and monitoring space. Nollie, it is a big profile. That's why I keep on checking my notes to see what else is of. And welcome and thanks for making it on such a cloudy day and just making the time to be available for us.
Not a problem, Pumza. Thank you very much for the invitation. And it's my pleasure to actually be part of She Unleashed. And I think also today's topic is very important, especially to my heart, high visibility and leadership visibility. So thank you very much for the invitation, for allowing me to be part of the session with you today.
Now, Nollie, I understand there is a background to all this big profile. And it speaks to the essence of actually today's discussion about leadership visibility. I understand you were appointed for just one area, which was the business intelligence environment. But somehow, as time went on, there was a recognition of your talent. And this was because of what you projected in the leadership visibility. Take us through it and how you became a sort of a lead in such a wide scope in your environment.
Okay, thanks, Funza. So yes, I joined F&B on the 1st of February in 2019. And when I was hired as an executive head for business intelligence in the Connects to Customer Business Unit. And then within 6 months of being there, my CEO then decided to promote me to look after both business intelligence and analytics. And then 6 months later, which was then December of 2019, I got promoted yet again to look after business intelligence, analytics, and then the planning and monitoring functional area. So I now look after three functional areas in total. I think this was in recognition of my work, my quality of work, and as you said, also the visibility. So like my CEO calls me his fixer. So he believes I can come in there and actually turn around a lot of the functional areas that weren't performing to the best of their ability. And that actually then talks to how I've proven myself in a short space of time based on my technical and leadership abilities, and how I've managed to actually then progress these functional areas quite quickly based on where they were before I actually took over. So yeah, that's a nice short summary of that.
So when we spoke, Nollie, you actually mentioned 3 dimensions of visibility and how it is intentional. You intentionally go out there and you set a goal for yourself that you will be visible in this spheres and that sphere. And I think with that, there is a study that you made from Harvard that spoke to the CEO level and what they saw as the attributes of someone being, progressed into the CEO level. Tell us about it and tell us how you built that thread then into your kind of plan for visibility.
Yes. All right, so Harvard's Business Review actually wrote an article, I think a year or 2 ago, where they actually conducted a survey on 240 senior leaders. And their definition of senior leaders is the C-suite executives. And this was for Silicon Valley. And they were actually asked to name the most critical factors for promotion into their level. And the result was that the top criteria actually emerged as being visibility. This superseded technical competence, business results, and team and leadership abilities. So all these leaders actually agree that visibility is the most important factor for advancement, especially when they're looking with regards to salary increases, promotions, and recognition, right? And then when you're actually looking at it, well, in my observation, visibility is a complex interaction of perceived skills, which is particularly the technical and leadership skills, and access to stretch assignments, and being known and liked by influential senior leaders within the informal networks. And all these are necessary for advancement. With regards to my own personal experience, what I then decided to do is make sure that from a technical leadership skill perspective, that I am competent in that regard. And then when it comes to stretch assignments, I made sure that I actually then volunteer and put my hand up to be part of those type of assignments, because research actually says that there's observed gender dynamics that systematically disadvantage women in achieving visibility and potentially limiting their career opportunities for promotion and keeping them from senior levels of organizations, especially when it comes to those stretch assignments, because most of the time, unfortunately for tech, it is very male dominated. So the in the space tend to give those type of high visible assignments to other male colleagues and counterparts within the tech industry. So this is where you need to then be purposeful and intentional in making sure that you are visible, you put your hand up, you actually volunteer for such assignments. And then also the networking component, where you make sure that you network with influential leaders within your organization and outside of your organization.
Nollie, I've noticed that your visibility is not just internal to your current role. You are quite visible. I mean, if you look at the thread of your LinkedIn and just the things that you've achieved in 2020 and just before, I think one of your accolades that we did not mention is that you were part of the top 10 for the SA Women in Leadership for 2020. How do you structure your visibility externally, and how has it paved the way for your visibility inside the organization?
Okay, so Pumza, I made sure that similarly that I'm intentional and deliberate with regards to being visible, especially outside of my organization. Mm-hmm. So in 2019, I made sure that I attended as many networking engagements, conferences as possible, in order for me to actually introduce myself to those environments, right? And whilst I was there, so one of like the biggest conferences in the data industry is DataCon Africa. So I attended that conference in 2019, and I made sure that I also introduced myself to the MD who was organizing that conference, and I let him know who I was, my position, the organization I came from, and my background. And I actually asked to actually be one of the speakers in their upcoming conferences. And he did come back to me and invited me to actually to be a speaker. So I started off with that conference, and then others subsequently came about. But I think that if you're also well prepared and organized, and especially with regards to the subject matter, that actually also puts you in a good stead with your peers in such conferences, and that ends up opening up other doors for you. So I was also very intentional with regards to which conferences I wanted to take part in, and I made sure that I became part of those. Luckily for me, a majority of the ones I'd already sought out ended up inviting me to be part of them. So that gave me a good platform from an exposure perspective. And that's also then led to the Sawol Trailblazers Awards with regards to my stance in inclusion, diversity, and transformation for women, particularly in the tech industry in South Africa and in Africa, where I then came fourth overall for those Trailblazers Awards. So as I said, you need to be very intentional with these things and deliberate in making sure that you are visible both internally and externally of your organization.
I like that you categorize it into different spheres, the visibility, and you structure it quite correctly, because it's not about just the public platforms. You've mentioned that you made sure that you were visible internally in the organization through introducing yourself to the leadership of the organization. That was one part. The second part, you stretch yourself up for any kind of stretch kind of projects, also making you visible to a broader forum than just your immediate working colleagues. And then the public platforms, the external part also then, it consolidates all of this and the visibility kind of structure then that you're following in your life. Are there other ways that we can look at for visibility? And I would like to also ask you, it's not a natural thing for a woman to want to be visible. What are the pearls that you can teach with to a number of young aspiring women? Because you ask people, you say, no, you can open the door and start talking in platforms, but it's not a natural, and people cringe away from such opportunities. What can you teach them about your lessons and how you have gained the confidence now to speak in more platforms?
So with regards to the confidence, I think for me, it comes naturally, and it's something that has been reinforced by my parents growing up, for me and my siblings. It's just how to always speak up, make sure that your voice is heard. And I think also is knowing your value and the worth that you bring to the table, right? Because a lot of people always try and undermine that. So I am naturally a happy, bubbly, positive person. That's just who I am. And it's something that I get from my parents. And it's something they reinforced from a young age. Whereas in a lot of parents, unfortunately, don't do that, where we actually tend to see our male children as being risk takers, and then the female children as being risk adverse. And there's a whole study that the university, Harvard Business Review actually did about that, where they actually gave kids in grade 8 a maths test for actually grade 10, and then they asked them to actually complete this test. And within 20 minutes, all the girls had given up because they found it hard and they weren't willing to try and they were frustrated. Whereas in the boys actually tried, even though they didn't know the answers, but they actually still tried. And that actually then spoke to the confidence of girls versus boys and how they're brought up. Whereas with boys, we allow them to jump in the playground, on the swings, to be messy, to take risks, where the girls should be prim and proper, watch what they say, how they speak. And we also give boys like Legos and toys that would actually advance them, particularly in their STEM abilities, versus girls where you give them the Barbie doll sets or those kitchen sets. So already those gender toys kind of create this this meekness in girls with regards to them being like wallflowers. And for me, I would actually advise parents to actually stop doing that, because that is unfortunately something that the girls grow up into, especially in the corporate environment where they don't have a voice and they feel it's okay because that's who they are and that's how they've been taught to be, to actually be in the background. Don't actually challenge the status quo, don't raise your hand, don't go against the grain. And unfortunately, that's the stuff that's actually holding women back from being highly visible in their organizations, which then has a negative impact on their careers. So my advice would be is whether you want to or not, you have to grow your network, right? You need to go out there and purposefully introduce yourself to people outside of your functional area within your organization. Because now the more people know about you and know about your abilities, the more you actually start becoming visible. You also want to be, as much as you want to become well known within the organization, same thing applies outside of your organization. So you want to build strong connections with influential people internally and externally. Where possible, present to your team, your department, division at any company-wide gatherings or conferences, so people actually start knowing who PUMSA actually is, right? And if you are able to engage in public speaking in your competency field and demonstrate your expertise, so people know that, okay, Nollie is SME subject matter expert, in data and analytics, etc. And that will then start opening you up, right, to other exposures and other opportunities. And then also ask to get involved in those highly visible visibility projects, right? Most of the time, especially for women in tech and in the corporate industry, those won't just land on your lap. So you need to actually put your hand up and actually make sure you volunteer for those things. And as I said, identify your key stakeholders and develop relationships with them. And then also the social media, especially nowadays, is very important. So find your own way of using social media to help you to become more visible. I could go on. There's a whole list of things women can do.
I see you're very passionate about the subject. Nollie, tell me, there also is an adverse side to this, because once you're a woman and you put your hand up, most of the time you do attract certain names. Have you come across of this, and what have you made of this, and has it actually has it tried to tone you down, or what have you done out of this?
I think with regards to who I am and my personality, the one thing that I am is I'm very strong-headed. I do not take no for an answer. And apart from that, like I'm sure a lot of women, we have been given names by our male counterparts, whether to our faces or behind our backs. But the thing is, it's about embracing that name, right? And taking that power away from that person who's actually giving it to you. Because most of the time, when people actually do that, they're doing it as they are reflecting their own issues and insecurities onto you. And what I've learned in corporate is not to take things personally. Otherwise, literally, a young death from stress and having heart attacks. So that's the one thing, is I don't take a lot of things that actually happen in the corporate environment personally. What I do though, try and do is actually prove people wrong. That's the one thing I love doing, is you've actually given me this name, this title, and you think it's going to hurt me, it's going to break me. But no, actually, I'll use that to empower myself and actually prove you wrong, instead of allowing you to actually then put me in this little box that you've actually created for me in your own head. Because that's literally a perception that you have of me. So yeah, I embrace such things and I really don't let them get to me.
I love that. I actually have my own name, which I've owned up to in any case. And I think it's actually powerful to own up to it, because people do it to actually try to, to suppress you and to suppress what you
Yes.
do. And it is a powerful stance to actually smile in their faces and actually say, well, I'll go by it if you're okay with it. And if it means what it means to me, because also how we translate that word becomes very important. If you translate it in a way that is empowering to you, then it takes away all the power that it is intended to harm you in any case. I love that answer, and I love that response. So tell me, you also do coaching and mentoring for young leaders, especially also an advocate for the STEM career, the attraction of females into the STEM career. So where do we find you if you want to get in touch with Nollie, and which platforms are you talking in, and how do we follow the work that you're doing?
Okay, so I think people can get a hold of me on all the social media platforms, whether LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, as Nollie Maoto. I think my handles are all referred to Nollie Maoto, so they could actually drop me a DM, drop me a message. Then also, I don't mind giving out my personal email address. So that is nbomela, which is BOMELA @gmail.com. So anybody that would like to get in touch with me, they must please do. I think it is extremely important to be role models and to be mentors and sponsors, especially to young women and women in the STEM or tech industry, because I do believe that we need to actually then be an example for the next generation of female leaders, right? Especially women of color in the tech industry, where if you take an example in the United States, unfortunately the stats don't exist for South Africa, women of color only make up 12% of the entire tech industry in the entire United States. And I'm sure we've got similar numbers in South Africa. So I think it's important for us in South Africa, and especially in Africa, for that girls to see that we are an example, that it is possible to have the Pumzas and Nollies of the world in these positions, and to be able to look up to them, and for us to be able to actually do our part in giving these young women support, and actually then provide them with also as many opportunities and guidance opportunities as possible.
Nollie, where to next? You stated that you are naturally ambitious as a lady. You know where you're headed. So if we have to watch the thread of Nollie in this year, what is Nollie targeting for 2021, 22, 23?
Oh gosh. So with regards to this year, from my lips to God's ears, I am planning this year to actually be part of a lot more speaking engagements and conferences and opportunities. One of the opportunities I got to be part of last year was the Open Data Science Europe Conference, which is one of my first international conferences. So I'm hoping to actually do more conferences outside of South Africa from an exposure perspective. And yeah, also similar to you, and this one is still under wraps. So I've also been approached to actually start my own podcast. So, and that is something I'm very excited about. I wasn't actually even thinking about it, but it actually goes back to this whole high visibility, where I actually then had a corporate come to me and they actually asked if I could actually start a podcast, and they would put it on their platform. So that podcast was actually going to be focusing on forceful, powerful women in the industries that they are in that are male dominated, and how they're actually breaking boundaries. So the podcast is actually called Unstereotyped with Nollie Maoto. And I know unstereotyped is not a word that exists in the dictionary, but it's the fact that you are unique, you are forceful, you are powerful, you're fresh, you're breaking boundaries makes you unstereotypical. So I want to actually put those women in the forefront of the various industries that they're in that are male dominated, to expose how they've actually done it, and more importantly, to make sure that young women and girl children can actually learn from them, and have actually action steps and action items that they can actually take out of each episode. So that's one of the things that I'm actually doing this year. So also with my ambition, as I say, from my lips to God's ears, I am planning to be a CEO within FNB in the next 3 years. So that is one of those things I will be intentionally doing, to make sure I position myself for that position in future. So yeah, I think those are the things I'll tell you for now.
I love that. I love the boldness of actually speaking it and speaking it into existence, because we tend to, have this intention, but we keep it secret and we keep it hidden, because speaking it also means that you make it clear to anyone who's listening that I have this intention and I want to do this thing, because sometimes we don't. We don't want to take on the new opportunities or the next steps of our careers. Now that you're saying it also to people who should be listening and opening the doors for you to get to that position. I love the podcast. We need as many podcasts as possible. We need as much content to really, influence and motivate women that are out there. Nollie, this was a powerful talk for me. I love the energy that you bring, and I love just the passion that it's evident in your speech. It's evident in how you deliver what you say, and you are definitely someone to watch out for the coming years. If I maybe just before closing, if I can ask, what is your favorite saying, and what does it mean to you? Just a favorite statement that appeals to you and maybe gives us a glimpse on who Nollie is.
Okay, so I actually have two. So the first one, I do believe that in life, you do not get what you actually ask, what you deserve. You get what you ask for, demand, or negotiate. It's one of those three. Because I think people have a tendency of believing that things will just happen and fall on their lap, but you need to be actionable about it. You need to ask for things, you need to demand for things, and in other situations, actually negotiate for those things to actually get them. Otherwise, they'll actually not happen. So that talks to actually putting action steps to the goals and dreams that we have and being intentional and deliberate about those. And then the second one is the fact that, especially as a woman, I believe that in the environments that we find ourselves in, especially in the boardrooms. So for me, I do believe no matter where you sit or stand in that boardroom, the table will shift towards you, because that's how powerful you are as a woman.
Wow, that is amazing. I like that they are powerful statements. They're actionable, especially the first one that says ask, which is like something that is like hard for women, for most women to actually ask. Nollie, thank you very much for spending time with us and for such an insightful chat. It was short, it was punchy, it was to the point, And we look forward to really engaging with you further in future. Thank you very much for honoring us.
Thank you very much, Phumza, for your time and for this invitation. It means a lot to me.
Awesome.